I thought forever that like being gay meant that I would never be happy as an adult. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and then after that, like being an alcoholic meant like I would just be drunk until I died.
Yeah.
And like, there's so much life like ahead for me. Sobriety, living sober is just such a gift.
Welcome to this episode of Rooted Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer and I'm your host. We're so glad that each and every one of you are here. It is National Pride Month, and as such, we are elevating voices of some very special people all month long, sharing their story from the LGBTQ plus community. And today, I'm so excited to have my friend from all the way from New York City, Will Ganss, three-time Emmy award-winning journalist from ABC. You might have seen him on Good Morning America or ABC World News or many other platforms. And now this one.
Thank you so much for having me, Patrick. I'm excited and nervous to be here. Normally, as you just said, I'm asking the questions. Yeah. So it's like, it's very different and a little intimidating to be on this side of the conversation.
Well, I'm equally as intimidated because I'm doing I'm questioning the pro now. And, you know, I have to add that you are one of my favorite storytellers because that's what you get to do all day, most days of the week.
I'm very, very lucky to have the job that I have and to be able to share the types of stories that I get to share, because for the most part they're very uplifting and joyful stories, so which is also what you do here, I know. So your work is important and I'm excited to be a little part of it today.
Absolutely. So I want to start off with dive really right in and ask you so we're talking about your story of recovery from addiction. Mm-hmm. And, this is the first time you've chosen to go public with this. And why did you make that decision? And what was it like when I asked you if you were...
Well, I think it's important that, during Pride Month, to draw kind of a comparison, right, between coming out, because I've come out before, mm-hmm. As a gay person, and I am coming out now as someone in recovery, as an alcoholic. There are a lot of different ways to say it. And the process is kind of similar. It's scary. There's a lot of navigating, like who to tell your story to and when to share it, and, why you might decide to share it. Mm-hmm. I'll probably bring her up again today, but there's a Brene Brown quote that says, "We share our story with those who deserve to hear it." Mm-hmm. And I think of all of the people who came before me who have recovered and are on the other side of, addiction or whatever, who are brave enough to share their stories, and why, that helped me when I was in a kind of a dark spot for a while, So when you approached me and you said, is this something you'd be interested in doing? Those things considered, like the decision was kind of an easy one to make, because it was like, if me talking about this at all can help, anybody, the version of me from 2 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever, like needed to hear stories like this.
Absolutely.
So, I think that's kind of how my decision was made. And also it's you, and you're amazing. And this podcast is amazing.
My gosh.
And, so
thank you. This is, anybody who's been on board and continued to watch knows that this is just a huge passion project of ours at Promises, and mine, and just in my life. And so every additional, heartfelt story that we get to elevate is all that much more meaningful. So today is no doubt going to be just that. And your beautiful explanation of why we share our stories is I love that Brene Brown quote as well. Mm-hmm. So very true. Before we go to the very beginning, I'm a very chronological person, and I like to go back to the start. But, back to how I found out you were starting your recovery journey, was you shared it with me through Instagram, and, being so vulnerable as somebody we had never met, but I think, you knew through my platform what I did. And hopefully you felt safe enough, confiding in me about that. I think that anytime we open up about our brokenness or like that we're seeking a change in our lives with someone, it is a way of maybe not even asking for help, but it's help / accountability / all the different things. Right. So when you in that space, who were you choosing to talk to about? Like, what was your mindset around asking for help or sharing for accountability's sake?
I think that, that Instagram DM was probably coming at a time in my life where like I was trying a lot of different things to control the way that I was drinking or how much I was drinking. And like I was doing, in my mind, I was like doing all of the things I could to see how I could make it work, you know? So like whether I was listening to new podcasts or reading new books or trying, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, but like trying to, okay, like maybe I just won't drink hard liquor or I will only drink 2 days a week. I was like in that space of my life where it was like, let me just see like, what are the ways the different pathways I can try to like control my drinking. And let me see if this stranger on the internet who, whose like platform I like have, really grown to like has any other advice, like anything that he can tell me that I'm not trying yet, because at that point, everything I was trying was really not working. And I was trying a lot of different things.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that piece because, I think there's so many people that feel so much shame, all of us actually, no matter what brings us to our feet, that brings us to the ground, right? When we're struggling, the shame and the guilt that's hanging on our shoulders, so much of the time prevents us from even saying to someone else, I'm struggling, or getting honest in any way, shape, or form. And so I think it's important that we talk about those periods of like screwing up. Most people don't get sober and then just stay sober the first time. And I think there's this misconception that I've talked to a lot of people that say, for the first number of years, once I finally got sober, I had it in my head that I was such a screw up because it took me screwing things up multiple times after I decided I wanted to try and get sober or fix my life before I actually was able to stay sober. When in reality, that's like most people's story.
Yeah. I think that like, that's exactly it. And like, as someone who is an alcoholic, like you watch other people who are not alcoholics successfully moderate, or like pregnant people, for example. And you're like, my God, they can just give up drinking for 9 months and like, it's totally great for them. And like, I would give up drinking until, my next headshots or something, you know what I mean? And it was a shit show of a 2-week period. You know what I mean? Like, so, and yeah, for me, it was like, it was never a black and white switch until it has been, like it never worked until it did.
Yeah.
And I tried all of the things, to make it work.
I definitely want to get into that as we move forward. But so hopping back to the very beginning, if we were talking to young, little Will as a child, how would you describe, your earliest memory, if you were to describe where you were living, what your family life was like? From that perspective, how would you?
Baby Will.
Baby. Love a good Moira Rose reference.
Oh, hello, you.
Yeah.
I am from Texas. I am the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger brother. My parents are amazing. They're still together. They have a very like rock solid marriage that is something to aspire to. So the middle child from Texas, like Dallas Fort Worth area, Very Catholic family, pretty conservative leaning politically. But, and this is like something that I get self-conscious about, especially in sharing like my like history of like my childhood was very good. Like there's no moment looking back that I'm like, oh, that's the reason I'm an alcoholic. Like there's no, there's nothing like crazy dramatic that happened or something that like, sometimes you hear other people's stories that are like dramatic AF and, it's like something from like a, Spielberg
huge
film
trauma.
or something. Right.
Yeah.
And, my childhood and everything was like very great. Like, earliest memories, like we were also very close with like my mom's extended family, my grandma, my grandpa, on that side. And, so, it was a good childhood. I do like, I'm interested in birth order and like how that affects people's personalities and stuff. But I do think being the middle child, like there was always some sort of like a attention seeking, like thing going on with me because like my sister always had her shit together. She was very type A. My younger brother was the baby. So like he was, and I will say this in public, my dad's favorite for sure.
So what would your dad say to that today?
I agree, probably. And he still is. It's fine. It is what it is. I'm okay with it now. But like the ways that I like would get attention, like I did, start doing theater from a pretty young age. I like ran for student council and like it was like, joined every freaking club there was. Like, so I think that like whatever attention I felt like maybe I wasn't getting, and not that it was bad or anything, but like I definitely like always felt like I needed to overachieve as a baseline maybe.
Ooh, that's a good way of putting it. So getting your needs met emotionally meant that. Did you have a sense of feeling like your value was less than, like, are you basically saying like you didn't know, but there's a part of you that knew deep down inside that without overachieving, you weren't going to receive the acknowledgement or the value and appreciation that you felt like you deserved?
Yeah. And I think also being gay and knowing that I was gay was also a big part of that, because it's like there's this thing that I know about myself that in my eyes and in the eyes of like the area and like the, environment where I grew up, and it's not just my family, it's like Texas. Whatever. It was like, anyway, knowing that I was gay and that there was this thing inside of me that I considered wrong, so it was like that being like, okay, well, if that is this secret that I'm harboring, let me show everyone just how great of a person I can be.
Right.
Oh
yeah.
So, I'm going to be student body president and I'm going to, get straight A's and I'm going to like the only option was to overperform.
So how early did you know that you were gay? What age?
It's like a kind of a fascinating question. Like I remember like freaking out at age 4 because I didn't get to go to the Spice Girls concert with my sister. It's like, that's kind of a red flag, or in this case, a rainbow flag, I guess you might say. And like, it was probably, I think the same age that everyone starts having feelings for like whoever they have feelings for. So like junior high, maybe, when it's just like, oh, like, I feel, and like, I've always felt more comfortable sitting at, in the cafeteria with a table of girls than I would with like a table of bros who are talking about sports or boobs or whatever they talk about,
Yeah.
So like for me, it's always, I think it's like just always been a thing, but it was never like something that I was comfortable like claiming as my own identity.
Right. So then at what age was it that you actually did acknowledge I guess come out of the closet? So you came out to yourself at the 12-ish age.
Sure. Yeah.
But
and
then
was like probably sure of it like freshman year of high school. I like did a brief stint of coming out. It was like a trial run. Probably around age 17. Didn't go very well. It didn't stick. I didn't stick the landing.
What do you mean by that?
I like came out to my family, but like it was not, we all decided that maybe it was just a phase. It was not just a phase. I'm here to tell you as a 31-year-old, it was not just a phase. And then like, you know, probably like in college is when I was like, cause I went to college in New York too. So I made the move from Texas to New York, and like, it was a whole new world. And I was like, oh, like there are people here who are gay and that doesn't matter to anybody. You know what I mean? Like it's just a thing about them. It's not the only thing about them. So I would say like by age 21, I was out, and also then like was when my family started like, you know, also getting comfortable with that idea too. So, yeah.
So would you say, well, I'll rephrase this a different way than in my brain. The first community you felt that you found safety and comfort and relatability in, was that when you moved to New York? And
yeah, like, and embracing like, and not hiding anything. Right. Yeah. Would have been like college friends and like, you know, going out in New York City and being like, oh, like these people are out here. Like, you know, whether it was a gay bar or not, you know, just like people can just like walk down the street, and if they're gay, they're gay. And if they're straight, they're straight. And like, truly there's nothing, it's not something to try and mask. Yeah. Like, you know, so I think like the more comfortable I became in New York City, the more comfortable I became in, myself. And, yeah.
That's awesome. Not everybody, I love asking that question, especially to people in our community, because, you know, some people don't find that freedom in that community until much, much later in life. And, so having recently gotten to experience the New York, life for the first time, that was really cool for me, as well. But so, you know, moving into the period of talking about like mental health and addiction, did you and your family, does it run in your family at all? A, and B, did you have a narrative of talking about how your family approached those two subjects?
So I would say this is actually interesting, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So as far as mental health goes, I don't think there was a narrative in my family. Like we didn't talk about it, and like no one went to therapy or anything, or was on medication for anything. Especially when I was growing up, it just wasn't a thing. It was, I don't know. Like we just didn't talk about it. We didn't know about it maybe. As far as addiction goes, so I had one uncle on my father's side who as long as I can remember, you know, like was an alcoholic, was unhoused most of his life. Like, as far as I knew, like, you know, I remember one time he came to our front door and like, we literally were hiding in the closet, like from this man when my dad went to, you know, and this is my uncle. Like, wow. So that was like what my idea of an alcoholic was someone, a homeless person who was someone to be afraid of. But then on the flip side, I mentioned earlier how close we were to my mom's side of the family. So we used to hear stories. My grandma and so this is my grandma Franny, who was like my favorite human being ever. And Papacito was her husband, Johnny Summers. So, like growing up, they lived in New York. They had a bar in their basement. So, and it was just like their home was like warm and fun and always full of fun memories. And like we heard stories about like their 23rd wedding anniversary when all of their friends came over and were going to try and finish 23 bottles of champagne to celebrate.
Oh, wow.
But exactly. Which like, and you do the math, like they're in their 40s at this point, like partying like that. But it never crossed my mind that like, that's a little bit much, you know, like, because it was always such a fun story and like this crazy thing happened and, you know, like someone was taken to the hospital because he fell off the car. But like, it was like the stories that you kind of tell about like drinking in college, maybe. So anyway, and then like there were other stories too, you know, just about how like if my grandfather was ever like hungover or maybe drunk, like my grandma would just say, oh, he has a virus. And like, you know, how many times did he get the virus? Like things like that, you know? So like, not saying that there was any alcoholism on that side of the family, but certainly alcohol was like a very celebrated and like invited, you know, thing. Even like when my grandma ended up passing away 2 years ago, like my sister had like special labels made and we put them on bottles of Merlot because like that was her favorite drink. So like the alcohol, my perspective of alcohol, looking at it as it relates to that side of the family, was like something to like keep close and like have with every meal, and like, you know, every celebration was very alcohol linked, you know. So I had this like idea that, and I think growing up too, like when I was like debating whether or not I had a drinking issue, I was like, well, if my grandparents were finishing 23 bottles of champagne at age 46, I'm fine. You know, like I have plenty of time to get my shit together because they were still raging, you know, well into, but you know, that's like one isolated story that I knew, you know.
You only need one and you can just run with
Cling
it, right?
to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. So that's a pretty great story though.
It is. It's a good story too, which is probably why I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I should be trying to finish 23 bottles of champagne with someone one day, you know, like, I don't know.
Goals.
Goals.
So when did you how old were you when you first got exposed to drinking, like as a regular basis socially?
I was a very good kid in high school. So like I didn't drink in high school. I was like, you know, I had friends and stuff, but drinking was not a part of our like social routine at all. So I would say like I started drinking regularly in college, you know, probably like later into my freshman year. So like 19, 20 years old. And it was like, I was okay at it when I first started.
It wasn't causing you problems. You were just, yeah. It's fun until it's not.
It's fun until it's not.
Yeah.
But I remember like I remember the initial feeling of being like, whatever anxiety I had around connecting, like how I said I would never sit with the bros at, you know, at the cafeteria, like after a couple vodka sodas, like I could talk to anyone. And like in college, I was living with bros, you know what I mean? Like in your dorms, you know, my first year roommate was like a straight guy from Louisiana. My second year, it was a straight guy from Baltimore and a straight guy from Long Island. And then, you know, so like, I think that like I was using alcohol to just like be like, oh, I can adapt to whatever
environment you needed to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that I can identify with that. And I feel like a lot of people that might not even be in the LGBTQ plus community can relate as well.
For sure.
Just, you know, in different ways. But, you know, I mean, so many of us are not comfortable in our own skin for one reason or another.
Right.
And so when did it become problematic for you? And do you remember how, like, did you acknowledge that it was a problem at the time?
I don't think so. Like, so I would say like it around maybe age 26 is probably when I was like I'm not drinking the same way other people are drinking. Because like for a while, like I said, like I was drinking pretty normally. There were like a few isolated incidents in college where like one day I woke up in my best friend's dorm and like looked in the mirror and there were SpongeBob Band-Aids all over my face. And I was like, I looked bad. Like it was like, and I think my initial thought was like, thank God I don't live at home. Like my mom doesn't have to see this.
Were the Band-Aids covering wounds up?
Yeah. Okay. It was not just, if it was just SpongeBob Band-Aids, I'd be like, oh, this is funny. But no, it was like, so what had happened was I was climbing a fence and fell and like landed on my face. And I think it was like the parking lot of a White Castle. I don't know if you guys have White Castle here, but
we
it's
do.
like
They may be closed, but they're still there.
Yeah. So it's like nowhere that I needed to be getting into that desperately.
Yeah.
A White Castle? I don't think so. So like that, I remember waking up, no recollection of what had happened, but like waking up in someone else's dorm room with cuts all over my face and SpongeBob Band-Aids. And I was like, that's scary. But it was like, I was like, this happens to people sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut to when I really started realizing that.
Wait, you made excuses for
my drinking?
Yeah.
Me? Yeah, I did. I was like, oh, it won't happen again. And like everyone has a night like this.
Yep.
And then like, there would be other things too, where like I did black out a lot, but when I really started to notice was like mid-20s, like I would drink and almost always black out, but also often like pass out or fall asleep wherever I was. So like if I was in someone's backyard upstate in New York, boom, asleep by the pool. And, like it might be. And the excuses that I would make for this is that, because I work in morning news, like I keep very weird hours, and often, I spent 4 years on the overnight shift. And so I was like, oh, my body's just more tired than anyone else at this party. So I fall asleep because my job is hard, or whatever. So that became the thing. It was just like, oh, like there, Will's asleep in the, whatever. And
so I love that you went ahead and answered that, because I love asking that question to people. Like, what is it that, what were the lies that you told yourself that kept perpetuating the disease? Did you also, like, were people at this point inquiring, like noticing that you were drinking differently and at different rates than your peers? Or was this just an internal dialogue that you had?
I think that like, this is an interesting question. I have been blessed, and like this, I could start crying about if I think about it too hard, but like some of the friends in my life have like stayed by me they've seen me asleep at Marie's Crisis, which is this very, very fun, like, piano bar. Like, so there were not people dropping out of my life that I was like sad that were like leaving or anything. And that's a credit to my friends, not a credit to me handling how I was drinking. But looking back, like, I'm still single now, and I joke about it, but like, I'm certain that there are dates and like relationships that fell apart because these people would be like, what the fuck is happening here? And so like, there were things like that, certainly, that like, I'd be like, I can't believe he didn't call me again. like, who wouldn't, like, I'm fun, I'm nice, like I have a good job. Why am I not off the market? And like, it's like, well, probably because you blacked out on your second date with this person. Like, that's not cute.
Yeah.
And then the first conversation I had was with one of my best friends, Alex Chin Fong. We went to this like, I know exactly where it is in New York. It's on like 8th and 21st, this like little restaurant. And of course I ordered like Cosmo or something. And it was after our, I think 5-year college reunion or something like that. And he was like, I'm concerned about you. Like, and he was the first person that ever like vocalized anything. And I was just like, not mad at him, but just like felt like a deer in the headlights. Like someone else is seeing what I've seen and shoved aside for so long. And he said it. And, I kind of like, maybe, I don't know if I kept him at an arm's length after that so that I could keep drinking or what. And then my other friend, Brandon, I remember we had this like, looking back, like beautiful kind of life-changing conversation, like by the river one time, where he was just like, I want the best for you. And I know that how you're drinking is not the best for you. And like, I believe in the person that you are and can be without any of this. For someone to like vocalize that, it's just like, it's to say the things that like, I guess when you're in active addiction. It's like you stop believing that you're worthy of anything.
Yeah.
So to hear someone tell you like you're worthy and this isn't how it should be, it's pretty remarkable, you know?
Well, and what I just thought about, like, kind of tying back to your childhood of those feelings of being a middle child, feeling like you had to outperform, achieve to achieve your worth. Mm-hmm. And moving forward to your 20s where, you know, you're in a city where you're vying for, which journalism is, I mean, I can't imagine being on your career path and, you know, having to work the way that you all have to work to make it and do the amazing things that you've gotten to do, especially while battling.
Yeah. I mean, and I do think part of the reason maybe I kept drinking for so long is, one, I mean, like, our industry, like, people drink, and like, you know, you get to the end of the work week and it's like, oh, that was wild what we just had to do for 5 days straight. And like, you know, my boss, I've seen certain bosses, not my current ones at all, but like the drinking culture was very heavy. And I also think that like my job is cool, you know what I mean? And so like, I think for a while I was like, well, if I have this cool job, I can't be an alcoholic, because like, it's, you know, I'm still working in a cool industry, in a cool city, at a cool, you know, like, so I was like, my drinking can't be that bad, because, you know, I am still getting paid to do something awesome.
You hadn't in your head, you're talking about like, a bottom hasn't happened yet. Right.
Right.
And had you kind of defined, was your bottom becoming like, in your head, it would have had to been becoming your uncle to be enough to admit that you were an alcoholic?
I think so. I mean, I think like, yeah, I think like having a rock bottom would be like losing all contact with my family, having no friends, having no job, you know, so I think that was the thing. And I also like, this is such a horrible thing to say, but like there were times when I never ever wanted to die. But there were times when I was like, well, maybe if I get cancer, I'll stop drinking. Like it was like, that will be the thing. Like I'll just have to focus my whole life on like, you know, going to the hospital and being like staying, you know, like it was like, that was like what it was going to take, because like I had tried, as I was saying before, all the other things, like, you know, only drinking beer or only drinking on the weekends or whatever.
Right.
And it never worked.
Right.
So in my mind, I was like, I don't know, like, that rock bottom seemed so far away, becoming my uncle. Yet I so desperately wanted to stop drinking or control my drinking that it was like, what's the in between, you know? You know, because I did, you know, I still had friends and I still, you know, but I was so deeply unhappy and unhealthy that it was like, you know, I don't know. Those were the types of thoughts I was having in active addiction. You
know, talking about the denial that we go through, it's interesting that you bring that up about, and all reference for, I will say, like, obviously in regards to cancer, but you know, the realness of denial here is that, and this is why I'm bringing this parallel up. I think it's ironic because in my probably similar stage of my addiction, when I say similar stage, maybe I was consuming a bit more than you were, but I just mean like the progression mentally, right? So I was having physical signs that were like numbness in my hands and different things that were I could not avoid any longer. And I had convinced myself that it must have been something like cancer, but like it couldn't possibly be, because I would do like some little Google. Deep down I knew what the answer was, but like I couldn't confront it. So like the denial piece for me was just like, it's probably cancer, and that I didn't do anything about it. Right. It couldn't possibly be the drinking. And so, but I think so many of us can identify with the like, there's a slow suicide process to it where we just like stop. We're really discontinuing a genuine care for our life.
Yeah.
And what have you. And so what point was it for you? You know, you had those two friends that connected with you and shared their heart. What point was it that you started that initial try to make that first change, or even just contemplate?
So I was working overnight shifts for a while. And so kind of how that would work sometimes is like, you know, I'd go in at 7 p.m. or whatever. So there had been a few occasions where my bosses at work, who in hindsight, you know, helped save my life, like be like, hey, something's wrong here. You know what I mean? Like, you know, do what you need to do and then we'll talk about it or whatever. And so like a couple of times my mom had come up to New York. She is, you know, one of the most selfless people alive. And I had mentioned before that my grandma's like my favorite. My mom is my hero, you know? But this one particular time, my mom was having a surgery. She'd had it scheduled for forever. And so she was like, you know, stuck in Texas. And my bosses, like I had, you know, they noticed that like I was not doing well. And they were like, you need to, you know, take a little bit of time, you know, do what you need to do. And so my mom was unavailable to come up. And so it was the first time as an adult that like, I was like, I have to get this together on my own. Like whatever steps are being taken need to be mine, you know? And so I reached out to a friend who I knew was sober, and we'll circle back to this in a minute, but like, thank God people publicize that they're sober, because it gives me, like it's the lighthouse that like, I was like, I don't know who to ask for help here. And, you know, I asked him, I was like, what did you do? And he recommended an outpatient place to me. And I went the next day. And I remember like, because I had like been drinking pretty heavily, like my body was a fucking wreck. And I ordered a milkshake from this like truck outside of this outpatient place.
Oh no.
But it was like the only thing in my head. I know. But like, so I was like literally like shaking and anxious and nervous and like walking out of an outpatient place, which like to me was like, I never, obviously you don't imagine, you know, like it's not what I aspired to ever, especially walking out and then ordering a fucking milkshake, like get a grip. But, you know, I remember, and I need to remind myself of these things because it like, you know, that's like where I was at, was like the most I could do was walk into an outpatient place, take the first step, walk out, order a milkshake, and like start my life over again. And so I did. I was able to take a little bit of time off of work, and like, you know, I was in intensive outpatient for a little bit, which I don't think I've shared with hardly anybody. And I started going to a 12-step program outside of outpatient. And it was just like, I also am very lucky that I was raised Catholic, and, you know, so for me, like finding a relationship with a higher power was pretty instinctual. Like I already had one. Yeah. And so just like any suggestion someone gave me, I was like, I'll take it. Like whether it was from outpatient, whether it was from, you know, this 12-step program, like, you know, anything someone was like, this might help. I was like, fuck yeah.
You know, it's interesting that, because a lot of us, it takes a minute, even once we start that initial path, to embrace the concepts of honesty and acceptance, let alone radical acceptance. And you're describing to me what I think radical acceptance looks like, when you throw your arms up and say, what I don't know what's best in any way, shape, or form for my life. So anybody who's healthy around me, like, you're like, what do I do?
Right. And I mean, I was really lucky because like the people that I asked, thank God, were like, gave me good recommendations. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I probably a little bit of that like overachieving like mentality that we were talking about earlier. Like when I started the program, I was like, I want to get through these 12 steps faster than anyone's ever done them. You know what I mean?
How did your sponsor feel about that?
He was like, pump the brakes. That's not how this works,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but like if I get the steps done faster, I'll be, fixed faster. And
graduate.
Of course, right. I'll graduate and, I'll be healed. But, now I know that like, that's not what it is. And that's not what sobriety is. And, like, God, I keep getting emotional, Patrick.
Good.
But it's like, it's just, I went in there to stop drinking and I like have learned a new way to live, and, it's just, it's getting sober and getting my dog are like the two best decisions I've ever made.
Your dog is so precious.
Yeah, he's the best.
For those who don't know, what kind of dog is it?
He's a rescue, hashtag adopt, don't shop, as they say. He's part Chihuahua, part Frenchie.
Yeah.
So he's like 9 pounds, but has the attitude of a little French bulldog.
Yeah. You got him on your Instagram, don't you?
Oh yeah. He's all over the gram.
Yeah.
He's the most important part of my Instagram.
We'll have stuff on the show notes. So if you're tuning in, most definitely you'll be able to follow along with Will's journeys and adventures and check out Archie, right?
Archie, yes. Yeah.
So, God, he's a really cute dog. Yes. So we're dog people, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know if you've thought about before what your priority, how did your priorities change between what you saw as living life good before versus what you see as living life good today?
Oh my God, Patrick. I mean, I think when I was drinking, everything was happening to me. Like I was a victim of everything.
You too?
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. I thought I was like so unique in that, like that, like my first breakup was like more dramatic than any other breakup that anyone had ever had. And like,
how'd you handle that breakup?
I drank about it, and like I
was trying to get you to go to the Taylor Swift reference.
The next sentence out of my mouth was about to be that I made playlists heavy on the T Swift, which by the way, I enjoy her music even more sober because it's like, it's, you see the genius of it even more. But like in 2021, I like had a really like sad thing happen with the guy that I was seeing at the time. Here in Nashville, I might add. But this trip has changed my mind. Nashville is my new favorite city.
Heck yeah.
But like that happened in April. My grandma died in June. My aunt died in July. My uncle died in October. And like, I was like, of course I'm going to be drinking about this. Like all of these things, like I'm a victim of these things. And like, now knowing what I know and like seeing, it's just like, these things happen to everyone and like I can react to them how I want, and like I think there was just such a lack of control when I was drinking. Like I couldn't my reactions were always horrible to everything, like and now it's just like the world feels a lot. I'm less anxious about everything. I'm single, but that's okay. Like I love my job. And like, however long it takes me to get the next promotion or the next whatever, like it's okay. I'm like, it's going to be okay.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admissions center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
Even recording this podcast, like speaking so freely about being gay and about being in recovery. Like, those are scary things to know that are just going to be like released into the world. But like, whatever happens, I'll be okay.
Heck yeah.
And, you know, I was in a meeting the other night and shared this with you, but like, you know, a girl in the front of the meeting like raised her hand and was, you know, I had spoken a little bit about how much of myself I've tried to hide for years and years and years, whether it was being gay or being an alcoholic. And this girl raised her hand and she was like, those are the things that make you you, and they're the reasons like I love you so much, you know? And it was just like, I thought forever that like being gay meant that I would never be happy as an adult. And, you know, and then after that, like being an alcoholic meant like I would just be drunk until I died.
Yeah.
And like, there's so much life like ahead for me. And even if there's not, if I walk out here and fall into the wood chipper in the back,
Oh gosh.
God forbid.
No, don't manifest that.
But like it's all okay.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just, it's, you know, I said it earlier, sobriety, living sober is just such a gift.
It is. You know, I didn't know you pre-sobriety, but I have to
Be grateful. You dodged that bullet. Yeah.
Well, you know, the observation I was just going to make is that I can't help but think that just knowing you as much as I do, I've gotten the pleasure of getting to know you so far. I feel like you love yourself on such a beautiful, healthy level that even many people I know in recovery haven't gotten to this place yet. And I know that is a byproduct and a gift of working, not only working in program, but working a good program. Because we're not loving ourselves before.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and that's the other thing too. I wish that I could, people who are not alcoholics, like I wish I could bring everybody and be like, look at this. Like there is a program, there are programs, like everyone can benefit from this.
Yes.
Especially, I mean, obviously I know what it's designed for and who it's designed for, but like, you know, it's just, it's given me the chance to like course correct a lot of things and like look at myself and look at like, you know, there's a Taylor Swift lyric in the song Karma, I keep my side of the street clean. It's just like, all you have to do is keep your side of the street clean and like, you know, your world is set.
Great things keep happening. Yeah. You know, you hear all kinds of different things in the rooms of recovery, and you know, it's not necessarily guaranteed to be, I've heard it's not necessarily guaranteed to be better, but it will be different. It's this or that. And I mean, honestly, I feel like in most cases that you start doing the next right thing, things get better. The promises do come true, you know, and
that shit works fast too.
Yes.
Like I like recently got promoted and, you know, got off of the overnight shift, and I was like, this is all I had to do was get sober. Why didn't I do this 5 years ago? You know, it does work fast. And like, listen, the other thing that I've learned too is like in sobriety, shit is still going to happen to you. Like Monday night, I found out that like this ex that I thought was like the one, or, you know, everyone's the one when whatever. But like one of my exes, like I found out like in kind of a jarring way that he's engaged to somebody else. And like in addiction, that would have sent me totally fucking spiraling, you know? But being sober, the first thing I did was text my sponsor. The next thing he was like, are there any meetings that you can get to? I went, I cried about it. And like, I'm okay. Like it wasn't the end of the world, but it would have been had if I was still.
You didn't turn it into a victim parade?
No, I didn't. Shockingly, don't get me wrong. I still listen to sad Taylor Swift, but like, you know, I like, you know, I'm all right. And like other really fucked up stuff happened too, you know. And my first like 2 months of sobriety, I found this is really graphic, and we don't have to include this in the, you know, podcast if we don't want to, but like, I found my next door neighbor in the apartment next to me dead on the floor.
What?
Yeah.
I thought I knew all the things. No, this is new.
Yeah.
What?
Like she was an older woman.
Oh my
and like,
gosh.
I noticed that she hadn't picked up the newspaper. So it was like 4 p.m. and I like texted her son who lives in Connecticut, and, but like something like that, if I was still drinking, like I would have, obviously like found her, called the cops, whatever, did everything that I did, and then just gotten wasted, because that's like a really fucking heavy thing to have happen to you. But like, same thing.
Huge trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
right. But like, I went to a meeting, I shared about it, and it, it's like, I've been given this like pathway to like, literally you just do the next right thing. You reach out for help, you probably go to a meeting or whatever, but you don't drink.
Yeah.
You don't pick up. And as long as I don't do that, shit's going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to loop back around and talk about some of the fun stuff with your work. But before we do that, one of my favorite things to ask people about is like, how do your relationships look different today?
I feel like I show up for my friend the way that like Alex and Brandon sat me down and were like, I just don't think that the way that you're living is the way that is good for, well, whatever. I think that I can show up for my friends in similar ways. And like, when I say I'm gonna be at a birthday party, I show up, and like, I don't fall asleep there. I remember, like I will send gift baskets for, friends' babies, and there's just like, I'm just a better person. Yeah. Like, I'm a better friend. I'm a better son. I'm a better brother. I try to be, at least, like, and I know that like I'm trying my best, and my best is like, it's okay. Like, it's not garbage anymore. My relationships are good. And like, I'm going on, first dates a lot, and I'm not getting wasted. So like, whenever there's not a second date, I'm like, okay, well, I tried my best and I didn't do anything embarrassing. So, it is what it is. Like, it's just, I'm certainly a better employee. I'm more proud of my work now than I was ever before. I'm just able to like not second guess my value, whether it's in a friendship or, a relationship or as an employee or anything like that, because I'm very aware of what I'm putting out into the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They talk about how the gift of desperation is what gets us in, right? And I think that similarly, kind of to simplify some of the things that you're getting to, is the gift of that perspective shift is what keeps us, if we let it. And that's such a huge, it really, really is such a huge gift, because some of the things that haven't changed at all, but our way of looking at it has changed. Like, you start to realize that the longer, I know I did, the longer and longer I stay sober, and our level of gratitude for those things that are still there is just different.
Yeah. Even like a conversation like this, right? Like, I'm like, I'm not usually speaking about myself or answering questions from someone else, but like, this to me is like, I've done something like this before, but like, this is it would be easier for me if I was still drinking to look at like something like this and be like, like whatever. But like, I'm very aware of how special this is, what I mean? And and that's only because I'm sober. You know what I mean? Like, this conversation, the work that you do, like the city that I'm in, the team of people that are here, it's like everything y'all are doing is going to help, it's just, it's amazing.
It is, and even I say this all the time behind the scenes. I don't think I've ever said it live, like on one of our recordings, but if you're listening or watching right now, we're doing this for you, even if you were the one person that tuned in. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But there are thousands upon thousands of people that we've been fortunate enough to, snowball this thing. And, I tell people all the time that are kind enough to come on and share with us, like, you'll never know the impact that this is going to have But I have to tell you, like it's huge, and there's so much gratitude in my heart for me and everybody at Promises, and the people that connect with your story. That this might be that pivotal moment for them that says, maybe I need to go to outpatient. Maybe I need to take my friend's advice. Maybe this isn't just fun drinking till my 42nd anniversary where I'm going to have
exactly all these bottles of champagne. Yeah. It's, the other thing, like I say often, and I know that like, it's all like God's timing, the universe's timing, whatever you want to say. Like, I wish I got sober so much earlier. Like, and I still feel like I did I'm glad I got sober when I did, I like better late than never for sure. And like, I'm not late by any means, but like, it truly is the best decision I've ever made. And so like, who knows how my life would be different if I had done it 5 years earlier. So like, if you're looking for a sign, if you're wondering whether now's the time for you to get sober, it's now. Do it now. This is your sign.
Absolutely. Yes. Love that. I love that, all about sign. How many times did you ever ask for
oh yeah.
If this gets bad enough or whatever. I mean, I think we bargain and do things like that for things more than just addicted behaviors, but things that we know that are medicators that aren't good for us all the time.
Oh, for sure. I'll be like, if it's windy when I get off of the subway, I'll get a milkshake. And you here I am looking at the weather app.
Did you not learn your lesson after the outpatient? Like, we're still going with the milkshake.
Wait, this is becoming a thing, I guess. Yeah. I do love a milkshake, you guys. Yeah, no, there was a billion red flags I blew past when I was drinking, like waiting for my sign to get sober. You know what I mean? And it was like, the sign is that little voice inside of you that's just like worried, like that's the sign. I think if I had listened to that voice or trusted myself or thought I was, worthy, it would have happened way earlier than it did.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that it happened when it did.
Yeah.
Or that it happened. The whole trust the process thing, it's like, this was your process for whatever reason it was. And I'm glad that it was.
Yeah.
You have one of what I think is one of the coolest jobs. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. So you get to report on some of what I think are the most fun stories at ABC. Would you share a little bit about like what those stories are and maybe a couple of your favorites that you've gotten to do?
Sure. So I would describe I'm like an entertainment and lifestyle reporter for the network for ABC News. So, anything from like red carpet, VMAs, lots of like fun Broadway stuff I get to do, anything trendy like on TikTok.
Heck yeah.
Whatever Gen Z is talking about, I am aware of it, whether I want to be or not. But it's also like a lot of feel good stuff too, which is like, I tried really hard to be like, a very serious, like, like news anchor guy. And like, I traveled, I went to one, it was like, I was assigned to go to one campus after there was a mass shooting there. And I learned very quickly that like, I just don't have that in me. Like I can't separate the work from I've cried 500 times during this podcast already. Like just not for me. So I took like a hard left turn into like Rainbow Road and like joy and, like entertainment type of reporting. And that's what I've, luckily enough been able to make a career out of.
It's so perfect and fitting. So, all right. So what are I'm putting you on the spot here, I know, but if we could put it to 3 that you can think of right now, at least that come to your mind that you are very fond of, stories that you've gotten to do?
So last summer, summer of 2022, I was in London for 13 days covering the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which was just like, it was like the whole city was like amped. I mean, whatever. It was decked out, like purple, like emblems everywhere. It was just like a very joy-filled occasion. And like on top of this like historic moment of the Queen celebrating 70 years on the throne or whatever, like there were Diana Ross performed, Barry Manilow was like, it was just like all of the Paddington Bear.
What?
I know. It was just like, and I got to eat like really like the Queen's favorite smoked eel mousse, which was a low light of the entire trip. It tasted as gross as it sounds. But it was just like a very like immersive, reporting journey for me. So that's like a highlight. Last Christmas, I traveled across America searching for the ugliest Christmas sweater in America. This is the type of very serious journalism we're talking about here, folks. But that was really, really fun. And I was like bouncing all over the country that week. That was really cool.
So what was the number one?
In San Diego, they made the world's largest, ugliest Christmas sweater. And it was wide enough, like big enough that if the Statue of Liberty wanted to wear it, she could. And so like I was sitting in the neck hole of the sweater. This thing is massive. And I thought we were out of time for this segment. So I was like, a cute way to wrap. Cause I was talking to the anchors who were in New York. I was like, I'm going to just start crawling through this, like into the sleeve. And I guess we had more time than I thought. So they continued to ask me questions as I'm like burrowing into this massive sweater. And he was like, is it comfortable? And I was like, yeah, it's really warm in here. But like, you just see this like lump moving through this giant sweater.
Yeah.
So like that was fun. And then like on a more like serious note, some of the like more like heartwarming stuff that I've done. I remember when the pandemic first started and they stopped taking visitors at like nursing homes and things like that. This woman took a job washing dishes in a nursing home so that she could see her husband, who was in an assisted care facility. And like sharing a story like that at the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone was just like, the world was bleak, right?
Yeah.
And so like a story of just like, humanity and like people like stepping up in ways that like they had to, so as fun as it is to crawl through a massive sweater in San Diego, it's also like a gift to be able to, spotlight stories. And that's like a woman who, you would pass her in the street and not,
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
So, that story always stands out to me because it was just like, I was proud that that was something that, we were able to share and especially in a time when the world was like spooky.
Sure. Well, speaking from, so you just shared some of your favorites, but as we've spoken, I learned about a story that has become like really interesting and special to me, Lexi, which I'd love to talk about for a second, because for anybody who hasn't known, this was such a beautiful idea that was born, and like talk about a gift that like keeps on giving. I mean, like it has inspired me since I learned about it. So just, how would you explain that story?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I kind of talk about TikTok-y type things too. So there's this woman who is known as the serial tipper on TikTok. And basically she like asked her followers, donate whatever you can. If you want to donate $1, if you want to donate 25 cents, if you want to donate $10, like whatever. And it started during the pandemic as well. And so she would pool all of the money that her followers would Venmo her and then go around and tip people that really needed it. So whether that is a waiter or someone, playing music on the street, because like, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, like live music venues were shut down, people were not eating out. So she'll just like surprise people with these tips that, like $1,000 tips that, people, that's life-changing money for someone who really needs it. And it's, totally random. And she would remind the recipients of the tips, like, this is not just from me, this is from, hundreds of strangers on the internet that, and it's grown and grown and grown. And, it's just like, she just like wanted to help people who needed it. And it also goes to show that like the internet is not always just an awful place. Like there are very, very kind people on the internet too.
Yes. And I love that. So freaking much. I mean, cause when I hear about that, I think, Johnny in Milwaukee and Krista in Kentucky donated however much money, and they'll never know each other, but they had a shared experience of goodness and wholesomeness in potentially monumentally changing someone else's life because of an idea this woman had.
Yeah.
And she's Nashvilleian as well, which I think is really cool. So
I not that you're asking, and I know we're like, whatever. One of my other favorite stories I did, also because we're in Tennessee, is I interviewed, and I've interviewed her a couple of times, the youngest American to have orbited the Earth and the first person with a prosthesis. So she was a St. Jude patient as a child and beat cancer. She is now a physician's assistant at St. Jude's to give back to, the place that she has incredible memories of, from the nurses who lifted her up while she was there. But then when SpaceX announced they were sending 4 people to space, and it was not just one of those little flights that no offense,
up and back.
Yeah. It was they orbited the Earth for 3 days. But Haley was selected to go as a representative from St. Jude so that they could raise money for the Children's Hospital.
Wow. And
she's just the coolest person ever. And similar to Lexi, everything she does is to make the world a better place. And it's just dang, and in my line of work and yours too, you get to talk to people like that sometimes, and you're just so it's just inspiring. It's I forget that people can be great.
People can be great. And I think that it's, you and I were having this conversation recently about how, with, as the promises come true in our own life and things are granted us, and we move forward and things are given to us, realizing that, this is behavior modeled for us from people who have gone before, that not to waste opportunities that we no longer need, that we can recycle those and look for people in our life that are in need, whether it's a job opportunity that, a contract work that we wouldn't need, or whatever, you name it, but stuff we wouldn't have thought about before we got sober, and gifts that keep on giving. So I just stories like that are, so cool. Yeah. And I think that when we hear about them, they only inspire and encourage us to want to do better. And I hope that as we age, we're just going to be, one day they'll write stories about both of us and be like, gosh, what awesome human being. No, that's so prideful. Oh my gosh. Cut. Don't include that. Oh no, that's the real alcoholic side of me showing. So yeah, leave it in. We connect on brokenness, right?
That's right.
And I'm certainly not perfect.
Me neither. And it's been one of the things that, like I said, even when I was first getting sober, I wanted to do it perfectly. I wanted to set a record for, curing my alcohol. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be, but it's life on life's terms.
That's right.
I can't, but yeah. But if someone does want to write about me one day and say that I was perfect, feel free. Have my permission.
I love it. Was there a certain point where you realized that the control thing, because that for a lot of us, once we start to, we get honest, we radically accept, but that relinquishing control can sometimes take, even though we're working our way through the steps. Do you remember, was there a point where you had that vision of clarity where you were okay, I've tried to take it back over and over and over, and I actually believe the thing that we're saying constantly, which is it's not in my hands?
Mm-hmm. I think probably just I don't know. I don't know if there is a specific time where I was it's probably a lesson that I just continue to have to learn.
Yeah.
My latest thing is just I'm 31, so a lot of my friends are married or getting married or whatever, and whatever timeline I had in my head for settling down, it was wrong, and it continues to be wrong. So it's just and the same thing with getting sober, whatever timeline however much control I thought I had over it was incorrect. And so it's, I don't think it's something, I think it's a lesson that I'm continuing to learn.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you for myself, and so that anybody connecting that wants to can shower you with well wishes when the day comes. But when is your what day is your sobriety birthday?
August 24th.
It's really close to my birthday. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and Taylor has a song called August, which now I'm gonna.
Is that why you chose August to get sober?
Yeah, and I chose. Yeah, it's why I chose August.
Yeah.
Listen, I can make anything into a Taylor Swift song if I really try hard enough, and this is no exception. But yeah, August 24th is the day. But I've my friends are probably so sick of me, but I've come over. It's it's 3 months, it's 6 months, it's whatever it is, and I love celebrating things.
Same.
And so this has just been it's opened a whole new can of worms, but good worms, gummy worms.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love that so much. Yes.
I just there's a reason to celebrate. Oh, it's my first wedding. I've gone to my first wedding sober. I've gone to my first karaoke night sober. And everything is a reason to celebrate.
Not everybody steps into that so easily. And I love that you're touching on it, that it is important to recognize those achievements as achievements and milestones worth celebrating, not just have tos and, well, I did that, sponsor said to, whatever, absolutely worth celebrating. I mean, we were going through the laundry list of when I had asked you well, what are the things that the yets to do that are, have worried you or whatever. And to be able to approach that with a perspective that's so positive, that's I went through this and I was okay. I mean,
yeah,
you're talking about the miracle of shame and guilt no longer being the shackles that hold you down. How many people are walking around with that? So, I hope this is a trigger point for some people to launch their own journey. I know it will be. And
yeah, I the way I slid into your DMs without having known much, never having met in person. Not to say that my DMs are open, but I hope by coming out in this month of Pride as a sober person that ask for help. I don't have all the answers, but I have some.
We will have a list on all of our podcast episodes. We've got a whole list of that, so we'll have your website stuff and Instagram and all of that. But
I'll send them all your way for the record, just so you know.
we have all kinds of resources if you scroll down whatever platform you're on right now. If you need help, it is there. Yeah. So.
And also, if you're gay, be gay. You can celebrate that too.
Absolutely. If you're on any spectrum in LGBTQ plus community,
I'm here to throw glitter for all of it. You're sober, go off.
I wish we actually brought glitter today. Gosh, that would have been great.
I usually have some on me, and
Aaron would have killed us.
That's
Aaron,
true.
do you have any glitter? I'm just kidding. But we're throwing figurative glitter for all of you right now.
We'll add it in post.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is the way that I love to close out, because I think it's just a great wrap. Again, putting you on the spot because you didn't know I was going to ask this, but to think of a last piece of encouragement for anybody that's been tuning in that has identified and said, oh, this part of his story or all of his story, he's telling my story. What last piece of encouragement would you like to leave for that person or those people?
I would say, whatever rock bottom you might be waiting for, maybe it doesn't exist. I was drinking far too much, but on Instagram, at least, my life looked great. And so if you're thinking about getting sober, I mean, like I said earlier, I wish I did it earlier. It's the best decision I've ever made. And like, your life can be good now while you're drinking, but it can be so much better.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be like a total shit show for you to have to want to stop. I mean, I don't know. And like, the other point that I would like to make too is that, like, as was reminded to me, you know, the other night in that meeting, like, the parts of you that you might think are broken or like irredeemable or ugly or whatever, the shit that you're hiding right now is the shit that's going to make me fall in love with you and other people fall in love with you and see you for who you are and connect with you in those spaces, you know?
Yeah.
So like, you know, it's Pride Month, and even if you're not in the LGBTQIA community, like, the parts of you that make you feel othered or different or marginalized or whatever, like, there are people that will celebrate you for those things. You
Absolutely.
know? We're out here.
Yes, indeed. And whether it's me and Will or people that are physically close to you, we encourage you to connect by doing the first step, which is asking for help, whether it's help because you're lonely or help because you're struggling. And so I will close out with reminding everyone, the way I always do, that it's never, ever too late to start loving yourself. And you're only ever one decision away from a completely different life. Thanks again, Will. This has been great.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.